Hello, let me get camera. Hi, my name is Bithia Lott, and I am the instructor or professor for this Biology College 101 course. Today, we are going to learn about the journey through the digestive system. So, organs in the digestive system help the body break down and absorb food. Okay, so how does the system work? As we're eating, we don't really think about what's happening to our food. And after we eat it, we don't think about it either. So, the objective is to understand the process of how the food is traveling through the mouth, down the esophagus. We're going to learn things about the gallbladder, the gastric juice from the stomach, the pancreas, how it releases enzymes. We're also going to learn about the liver. The liver releases bile that breaks down the food, which travels all the way down into the small intestines where nutrients are received and removed from the food, and then down into the large intestines and where water and salt are absorbed, and then down into the rectum or the anus where the hard solid is released as feces. All right, so before we begin, I want us to do an activity. So we're going to implement what is called the backward design of learning, which is I give you an activity. I'm going to give you a chart like this, very similar like this. I will label it, and I want you to label the parts as good as you can, and then we'll dive into the lesson for today. So go ahead and complete that with your group, your assigned group, and then we'll get started. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. Awesome. Excellent. You all did great. We've had a great discussion about what your outcomes were in terms of how you labeled it before we even went into the lecture. And now we're going to get into this lecture. Okay, let's start with the mouth. How many of you knew where to label the mouth? Excellent job. Excellent job. Okay, it would be very interesting if you didn't know that. But I'm happy you did. Okay, so the next thing is the esophagus, right? So the food travels through the mouth all the way down to the esophagus. In the mouth, we have an enzyme called amylase, right? And depending on what type of food you're eating, there are specific type of enzymes that are released to break down the food. So the enzyme breaks down the food, creates a bolus down into the esophagus. It makes it easier for your throat to carry the food down, right? Or else it'll be scratchy and then you can't talk and it'll cause a lot of problems. So the body is very smart in a way that it knows how to break it down so it can travel down. So the food travels down, our teeth breaks it down, our tongue does the work and the churning and the turning, and then it becomes a bolus. Okay, so as you can see here, this adorable little kid is eating and is not even thinking about what's happening to her food. Look at the face. But they're admiring the food, and that's great. Okay, so the esophagus, as we mentioned, takes down the food after it has been broken down in the mouth, right? And swallows it, and it goes down the pipeline. So here we'll see the broccoli traveling down the esophagus. We'll see something wonderful here. So watch this. As it gets to the stomach, the gastric juice breaks it down. The liver releases bile, and the bile is actually kept in the gallbladder. And then the pancreas also releases enzymes to break down the food, right? This is really interesting. So again, the stomach releases the gastric acid where the food is broken down. And then once everything, all the enzyme, the bile, the bile released, stored in the gallbladder, and the bile released from the liver and the pancreas, which is also releasing enzymes to break down the food. Once it gets out of the stomach, it enters what we call the intestines. But first, it enters the small intestines, as you can see here. the small intestines then takes it and absorbs the nutrients from the food. So let's see what's happening here. It absorbs the nutrients from the food. And then here we see the small intestines being demonstrated, but we also see the annotation of the small intestines breaking down food. But now the large intestines come into play a really big role of absorbing salt and water from the food. And then once the large intestines takes the salt and water from the food, it only leaves it with a soft mass called stool. And so stool then becomes a solid mass that travels all the way down to the anus area where it's released as feces, right? It's the waste matter from all of the things that has been absorbed from it's basically the leftover from the food. Okay, so I want to leave this, before I even go into my next slide, I want to leave this as a place of discussion. So I want you to turn to your partner, and I want you to now outline what the steps that we've gone through, right? There are 7 steps. You see the 6 and 7 steps on the screen now, but I want you to turn to your group, and I want you all to outline what we've done so far to recap. Before I recap the lesson, I want you to meet with your group to analyze what we've talked about and to discuss what we talked about. Okay, you have a question? Perfect. It's a great time for a question. Yes. So you're asking, how does all of this fit in our stomach? The small intestines and the large intestines are interconnected. When you see it even in real life, it's very difficult to, unless you're very well trained medical profession, it's very difficult to even see what is which one is which. But the body knows specifically. The small intestines is connected to the stomach, right? So right when it leaves the duodenum, which is the sphincter muscle, is released, and there's a duodenum right here, and then it connects to the small intestines, which is hidden right behind your large intestines here. So there's a distinct difference when it comes to the art part of it. But yeah, that's a good question, probably for a medical professional. How does the stomach know that you've eaten? Well, there are signals that are sent to your brain, sends signals, and then your brain communicates to your stomach to release the gastric acid. Excellent. These are really good topics. Okay, awesome. You all have completed your discussion with your group. We've talked through it. You've come to the understanding of what all of the process is to go through the digestive system and the journey. So let me recap really quickly. The digestive system, okay, plays an important role in breaking down food in our bodies. It's very important that we understand that it starts from the mouth, where an example would be when it starts in the mouth, it's broken down by an enzyme. An example of an enzyme, there are many enzymes that breaks down food in our mouth, but an example of an enzyme that breaks down food is amylase. It's very common, right? Amylase is one of the enzymes that breaks down food in our mouth. It travels down through our esophagus and then down into our stomach, where gastric acid is released, and then down into the intestines, the small intestines where nutrients is taken out, and then the large intestines, and then down into the anus. So before we leave the class today, I want to make sure, before we close the class today, I want you to have this discussion in your discussion portal on if you were to take a journey in the large intestines, where would it be? Okay, so this is the question for your group. And then also, this is extra resources for you all to go and research and understand the topic much better. So I hope you enjoyed this class. I hope you learned a lot. And so next class, we will be learning about enzymes.